This episode of the Mr. Kacy podcast is being recorded on a lovely snow day here in Ohio. And so I am nice and comfortable and warm in my hoodie and ready to talk about some effective classroom routines and procedures that hopefully you'll be able to incorporate in your classroom and make a big difference for you. So let's get started. When you think of quality shows, whether it's TV or radio, different things that you consume, that you take in, they all have a formula for success. And really, your classroom really isn't any different. You have certain things that work for you, certain things that work for your kids. And so in this episode, what we're going to really try to take a look at is um, thinking about what's the right formula for your classroom. Uh, what are some things that you can do to really help produce that right formula that's going to keep those students coming back and wanting more and keep you fresh and feeling good about what you're doing within your classroom. Tip number one is starting strong and finishing smooth. So think about, how do you start your lesson? What are some things that you do to get rolling with your class? And what are some different routines that you could put into place to help make sure that each and every class period you start is getting you the most bang for your buck from the very start of that class? You know, I really think about this, especially in a middle school, high school way, but it could be effective in elementary as well. But particularly with middle school and high school, when you have students that are transitioning into your room, they're going to be in there for 45 minutes or so. When that bell rings, what do you want them doing, and how do you get them rolling right from the start? This is when we talk a lot about bell ringers. We talk a lot about different activities that we have them start with. And really, another way to think about it is attention grabbers. What's something that's going to grab their attention right from the start and help transition into the objective for the day? A big thing for me when I'm doing classroom walkthroughs, I want to see that there's an objective for the day, something that everybody in the room is attuned to, as to here's what we're trying to get accomplished, here's what we're trying to do. So really think about that. What's the objective for the day? And then is there an activity that you could start with right from the outset that's going to help everybody get in that mindset? So as soon as those students walk in, they get seated and they're starting with that activity. Depending on the content area, there could be some different things that you incorporate. ELA teachers a lot of times are going to work in sustained silent reading. Different a math teacher may have a certain formula that they're having students work on. I know in social studies, a lot of times what I would do is use state testing, a prep question, just one single question that I'm going to have students try to answer. And then they know when I'm done taking attendance, we're going to go over that question as a group, and then we're going to move on. But I always try to tie it to my objective. So again, trying to think of what are some things that you can put in place that are going to help move your classroom forward. The other side of this is finishing smooth. And so think about, you've now run an entire lesson, a 45-minute lesson. You've done a bunch of different activities. How are you winding it all up at the end? One thing that drove me crazy as a classroom teacher was when students would pack up with 5 minutes to go. Again, any type of downtime is going to be your enemy. So always think about, what are some different things, what are some different ways that you can make sure that you are getting every ounce of time that you can from that 45 minutes, making sure that every second counts and that you're having as much positive impact as you can on your kids during that time. So think about, it may be recapping, it may be having a calling on a student and having them restate the objective, and here's what we did to meet that goal throughout the class period. You can come up with some different ways, some different things that you can do, but really be thinking about, okay, how can I really get the most out of those last few minutes of class? Reflection is a huge thing for your students and for you. Here's what we've done. Here's what we've talked about. here's how this is going to lead into what we do tomorrow, or here's how this ties to the homework that I assign. Here's how this ties to the unit as a whole. We've got a test coming up down the road. This is some things that we're going to be able to do and be able to make use of. So again, just some things to think about with starting strong, finishing smooth. Tip number 2, sharpen those transitions. Again, like we talked about with tip number 1, downtime can be your enemy. So really think about, as you move from activity to activity, what are some ways that you can make sure that those are smooth transitions? Quite a bit of it is just practicing the transitions with your kids, having them understand what the routines are. Okay, we finished up activity A, we're going to move to activity B. I need you to do this, this, and this. And make sure that you're clearly communicating what the expectations are with the transition. By and large, students want to please you. They want to do the right thing. And I know we all have those outliers, but for the most part, kids want to be a part of a successful lesson. And so really thinking about what are some ways that you can make that as smooth as possible. When students feel like they're just sitting there waiting for the next thing and they're kind of watching you get stuff set up, that's never positive. They want to feel like they're being a part of it, and if they can help with that transition, and I'm a middle school principal, so I'm realistic about it. I know that they're gonna gripe and grumble the whole way, but down deep, if they're helping move that lesson along and get to something that they're interested in, it's very helpful. So, some things that I did in the classroom was students knew what some of the different formations of desks that we were going to be in. If we were going to move from rows into small groups, if we were going to move from small groups to rows, if we were going to circle the perimeter of the classroom so we could have a whole class discussion. We had different formations for the desks, and I would let the students know, hey, we're going to move to this spot, ready, go. And I would give them, you've got 15 seconds, and I would count it down. Different things like that to help transition from one spot to another. All right, students, we're going to close up your Chromebooks. We're going to get out a notebook. We're going to, and you're kind of giving them what the steps are, and then also always put a time with it. We're going to take 10 seconds and we're going to do this. We're going to take 30 seconds and we're going to do that. And, kind of give them, here's what my expectation is as a teacher. Here's what I'm looking for from you. And here's what you need to be ready to do in this amount of time. That helps students understand what you're wanting from them, and it gives them kind of a benchmark as to how they should proceed. From my coaching days, I always think about this as calling the play and then running the play. I want the students to understand, here's what the expectation is for them individually, here's what the expectation is from them as a group, and then knowing that when I say, here's what we're going to do, let's get this done as quickly as possible so we can get on to the other stuff that we want to do. That's something that I always kind of brought in with my students, and I've seen other teachers do this as well. Hey, if we want to get to the good stuff, we got to get this piece of it done right now. And that using that to help kind of guide those transitions is very helpful. The other piece of it is really thinking about the timing. Moving from one activity to another, you kind of have to have an idea, even if it's a rough idea, but you kind of have to have an idea of how long activity A is going to take and how long activity B is going to take, and then how we can move from one to the other, as smoothly as we can. It's hard to think about, but sometimes it just takes time, and it just takes practice to get to that point. But as a new teacher, always be thinking about what are ways that I can move from point A to point B as smoothly as possible. Tip number 3, embrace hand signals. A piece of this is just thinking about, again, some different ways, some different things, routines, procedures that you can include in your classroom that will help with getting you information as a teacher, helping you kind of take the pulse of the kids that are in your room, allowing you to have a good understanding of where the students are with the content that you're teaching, where they're at with the lesson. And it can be as simple as everybody give me a thumbs up if you're feeling good about where we're at with the topic. Give me a thumbs down if you're just completely lost. Give me a thumbs kind of sideways is if you have a kind of an idea, but you want to talk with a classmate about it. You can do different things like that, and that gives you a quick view of the landscape of all 25, 30 kids that you have in your classroom. If you're seeing all thumbs up, you know that you're good to move on. Students are going to be very honest with you. If they have no idea, they're going to tell you thumbs down real fast. So that's an easy way to kind of gauge that. Another one is give me a scale on 1 to 5. If I've got 1, I have no idea what's going on whatsoever. 5, I've totally mastered it and I'm ready to move on to the next thing. That can help you as well. Give you just kind of a quick poll of your classroom and give you an understanding. Doesn't take any time, doesn't take really any energy, and just gives you a nice little routine that you can use throughout all kinds of activities to help you with your classroom management. Tip number 4 is to foster independence with your students. Set the stage for the activity and then really turn them loose. And so here's kind of where my thinking is with this. Here's how I would approach this is I would go through what your expectations are for said activity. Here's what the steps are. Put them up on the screen, put them up on the board so that the students can reference those. But here's what you should do, step 1, 2, 3, and then let them know that it's going to be on them to be able to handle that independently. And so it could be them working by themselves at their desk, but it also could be where you have a group of students and you've outlined here's the expectation for while you're working in the group. And then you turn them loose and they're working and you're moving around the room and acting as a guide on the side, and you're coming around to perform some check-ins with the groups. If you do this on a consistent basis and you do this over the course of the year, this isn't a one and done. This is a consistent routine that you're going to be doing with the students. They'll get the hang of, okay, now I know what my job is as a student, and I know that that the instructor is going to be coming around and working with me individually or coming in to check in with my group. I know what I can expect, and so now I'm ready to get going. A perfect example of this, if you ever want to see this in action, and it runs so incredibly smooth, is go into a science classroom when they're running labs. Science teachers have this down to a science. They have this. It's an art form that they have mastered, and it is getting the students into their lab groups, getting them started with that, and then working with those students, moving around from group to group to group. The students know what the routine is. They know what the safety procedures are with the lab equipment. They know all of that. They have practiced that. They have prepped that. And then the science teacher is acting as a guide on the side. So if you ever need to see it in action as a new teacher, talk to your science peeps and get with them and ask them if you can come in and just observe, because they know how to run a lab group. Tip number 5 is consistency is your friend. And we've talked about this throughout the episode, but really the more routine your routines are, the better off your students are going to be. The more consistent you are, the more consistent your outcomes during your lesson will be. And, teaching the students what your expectations are so that they know the students don't like surprises and they want to know what the expectations are. The more that you are working with them on that, the better off you're going to be. So again, try to be as consistent as possible. For a lot of our students, you're the constant in their life. They may have different things going on at home. They may be involved in all kinds of different events, activities, things outside of class. You are the consistent. You're the constant. And so take advantage of that in the sense that letting students know, here's how it's going to be every day in my room. Here's what you can expect when you come in. Here's what you're going to get from me as a teacher. The more that you can be consistent with that, the better return you're going to get on that investment of time with your students. really appreciate this opportunity to be able to talk with you about effective classroom routines and procedures. Uh, if you have any good ideas yourself and you want to share with those, please make sure you drop them in the comments. As always, really hope that everybody will consider liking and subscribing and sharing this podcast with their friends. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're all learning about education together, and hope that if there was one thing in here that made you stop and think a little bit, that's a win. So thank you very much for tuning in, and hope everybody has a great week.